بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم وافتح علينا بمعرفة العلم وسهل أخلاقنا بالحلم واجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسن. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله ثم الحمد لله. Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal has granted us 11 nights of Tarawih, 11 nights of Salatul Layl. And in those 11 nights, subhanAllah, we have recited or we have listened to the recitation of what the scholars call and what through a Sahih Hadith, at-Tawbah or at-Tiwal, the 7 long or lengthy chapters in the Qur'an. Obviously not counting Surah Al-Fatiha. There's a Sahih Hadith narrated in the books of Imam Ahmad, or in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, where it is said, "Man akhadha sab'at al-ula min al-Qur'an, fahuwa al-habr." It says, whoever takes the first 7 chapters of the Qur'an, then he's a scholar. Habrullah was the nickname of Abdullah ibn Abbas, if you remember. Comes from this hadith over here. And some of you are thinking, I've read through the 7 chapters. Does that mean I'm a scholar? Well, if you've read it, and you've memorized it, and you've understood it, and you've implemented it in your life, then yes, you are a scholar then. But if not, then inshallah keep striving towards that goal, inshallah. It's not hard or it's not difficult to understand why a person would be called a scholar if they were to accumulate this wealth of knowledge within themselves. Essentially, you imbibe it into yourself. You make it a fabric of your DNA, right? Because, for those of you who have just done the tafsir of Surah Baqarah, you can only imagine what the others are full of. Yeah? Because after you do Surah Baqarah, you think you're a alim. Yeah? And it gives you that impression because of the bulk of knowledge and information locked within that one surah. And it covers everything from A to Z, these 7, the foundations of Islam. And it's Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Ali Imran, Surah Nisa, Surah Ma'idah, Surah Al-An'am, Surah Al-A'raf. And then we get to Surah Al-Anfal. Tonight, which was completed tonight, Surah Al-Anfal. But this hadith is found in the tafsir of Surah At-Tawbah. And now you're wondering, but you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Surah At-Tawbah is number 8. And the wonderful and beautiful thing about Surah At-Tawbah is that it doesn't start with a basmala. Have you noticed? You've opened the Mus'haf and there's no basmala there. Bara'atum min Allahi. That surah over there. And there are 2 reasons for this. One being that the scholars hold that Surah Al-Anfal and Surah At-Tawbah is essentially one surah. Yeah? They just divided a little bit to show that the emphasis has shifted a little bit. And the other being to show you the severity. I don't know if you've heard those ayat that were being recited. Ya khiyana, munafiq, tark al-asfal min al-nar. It's full of severe warnings. And they say that it's so severe that it's devoid of the rahmah of Allah. There's no Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. That's how severe this surah is. Umar ibn al-Khattab used to say it's authentic. It's an authentic narration to Umar ibn al-Khattab, an athar to Umar ibn al-Khattab. He says, "Ta'allamu Surah At-Tawbah, wa 'allimu an-nisa Surah An-Nur." He says, learn. Speaking to the men, learn it. Learn Surah At-Tawbah, and teach Surah Nisa to your women. Now, when a lot of people hear this narration for the first time, then they think Umar ibn Khattab is discriminating between men and women. But that again is people, looking at things with su'u dhan, with a negative assumption from the get-go. It's not, Umar al-Khattab is not saying men only learn Surah At-Tawbah and women only learn Surah Nisa. Why did he say that? We all know Umar al-Khattab had a very firm grasp on social economics. Yeah? I mean, of all the khulafa, he understood the fabric of what a society needs better than most. We can all agree on that. And if you look at the content of Surah At-Tawbah, it is essentially all about how we engage with the outside world. Right? The borders of Islam, the borders of the Muslims. Yes. How we engage with the munafiqeen, how we engage with the mushrikeen when we have contracts with them and they keep betraying. How do we engage with the believers? In a real way. For those of you who know, those who have iman, essentially what it means is those who recognize the reality of the situation, of the matter, and they engage with it. They don't ignore it. They don't hide or convince themselves, that they are in something that they're not. And the reason why Umar al-Khattab said this is because men need to learn to protect the borders of the ummah. And women need to learn to protect the households of the ummah. Inside and outside complement each other, don't they? And if the one fails, they all fail. And he was saying, oh men, concentrate on this. Because this is part of your amana. And oh women, concentrate on this because it's part of your amana. But he didn't say, women, you can't learn Surah Nur, and women, you can't learn Surah Tawbah. And some people look at it that way when they want to see things negatively. And with regards to Surah Tawbah itself, there are two ayat, in my opinion, that connect the thread of the entire surah. The first one is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the mushrikeen. And He says to them, فَإِن تَوَلَّيْتُمْ, when you have turned away, right? In other words, you don't want the truth. You want to continue relying on other than Allah. فَعْلَمُوا, then know with certainty. أَنَّكُمْ غَيْرُ مُعْجِزِ اللَّهِ. Know that you can never escape Allah. Even if you rely on other than Allah, you can never escape Allah. Many people rely on other than Allah in many, many things. And that is why this surah comes to shake you a little bit and to ask you the question, are you relying on Allah? Who are you actually relying on? Right? In the middle there's a lovely thread where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Yawm al-Hunayn. And what happened on Yawm al-Hunayn? You were proud of your numbers. Oh, your armies had big numbers. And you thought you were going to win this day because of your numbers. You didn't win. إِذْ أَعْجَبَتْكُمْ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends the surah in the most appropriate way for the believer, addressing the Rasul of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says, fine, those people, they turned away and they relied on other than Allah. But you, O Rasulullah, فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا, when they turn away, in other words, they've refused to acknowledge the reality of the matter and engage, then you, فَإِن تَوَلَّوْا فَقُلْ حَسْبِيَ اللَّهُ, then you say, حَسْبِيَ اللَّهُ. حَسْبِيَ اللَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُوَ. Sufficient is Allah for me. La ilah, there is no ilah but Him. عَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلْتُ, upon Him do I rely. Not on anything else, not on any intermediaries, nothing. No idols, no money, no armies. عَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلْتُ. Why? وَهُوَ رَبُّ الْعَرْشِ الْعَظِيمِ, because He is the Lord of the throne. The throne is something that the mind cannot even wrap its mind around. I mean, we've seen many things that the human mind can come up with, it can conceive. I mean, I'm sure there's not one person here who hasn't watched the movie. Yes, there are, mashallah, some salihin, but most people have watched the movie. That is essentially the extent of what the human mind can conceive, is it not? And we can conceive a lot. We can, mashallah. But you cannot even wrap your head around the arsh. How big it is. Now, Imam Nawawi, he used to make it a point that every single morning, every single evening, he would say, حسبي الرب من المربوبين حسبي الخالق من المخلوقين حسبي الرازق من المرزوقين حسبي الساتر من المستورين حسبي الناصر من المنصورين حسبي القاهر من المقهورين حسبي الذي هو حسبي حسبي من لم يزل حسبي حسبي الله من جميع خلقه حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل. There's a hadith in Imam al-Qurtubi that says, if you say these 10 Hasbi Allahs, then it will suffice for you in this dunya, 5 of them, and in the akhirah, the other 5. Ultimately, what it translates is into, sufficient for me is my Lord upon those who he has made lords. Sufficient for me is the creator over those who he created. Sufficient for me is the one who provides over those whom he provided for. Sufficient for me is the one who grants victory over those whom he granted victory to. Sufficient for me is the one who conceals over those whom he conceals. Sufficient for me is the one who vanquishes over those whom he vanquished. Sufficient for me is the one who is sufficient. Sufficient for me is the one who never ceases to suffice. Sufficient for me is the one who is in charge of all my affairs. Sufficient for me is the one over whom all of creation is dependent. It means nothing if you don't have Allah. Even if you have manpower, you have children, lots of sons, or you've got businesses, or you have all the influence and power in this world. If you do not have Allah, then ultimately you have nothing. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين